Hi, everybody. I'm Sheldon F. I'm an alcoholic. It's an honor and a privilege to get to share with you tonight. It's always an honor to do anything in Alcoholics Anonymous. I hope if I do anything this evening, it's share with you my passion and love for this program. I get three goals typically when I share my story. I hope that I can entertain most of you. I hope I inspire a few of you, and I hope I only anger one or two of you. If I anger you, call your sponsor. But if it turns out I inspired you, my phone number is by my name, and it's there because I want you to know how to get a hold of me. And, we're all busy, so text is great first, so we can figure out a time that we're all available. And I just love talking to alcoholics, and I love this program, and but hopefully, I just help fill some space in your Friday night, and we all get to remind each other that we're alcoholics and that we're trying to help each other and search for God and do whatever it is that helps us stay sober. So I told you I'm Sheldon. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is July 17th of 96. My sponsor's name is Charlie H. He lives here in Las Vegas, where I live. Because of the beauty and power of Zoom and the circumstances where I had to change my home group after the pandemic began, my current home group is in Hermosa Beach, California. It's the Hermosa Beach Men Stag, and I love those guys. Uh, I knew most of them before Zoom, and I've gotten to know them all since. And isn't it crazy, right? Like when this all first happened, I'm like, oh my God, there'll be no meetings. I'm going to die. How am I ever going to survive without meetings? And then Zoom, it's like there's, as many meetings as you want. And you normally to come hang out with you guys, I'd have to get on a plane and it'd take me a whole freaking weekend. And now I'll be home by 6:02. So 7:02 my time, 8:02 your time. So Zoom's marvelous. I'll share a little bit of my experience with you that perhaps this evening, this last year. But first of all, let me tell you that I'm a bad drunk. Uh, I just am. I'm not good at it. Some people are good at being a drunk, right? They're to carry the bottle of vodka in their back pocket drinkers, and when they drink, they if they have an instrument, they play guitar better when they're drinking than when they're sober, or they shoot pool better when they're drinking than when they're sober, or they hit on possible sex partners better when they're drinking than when they're sober. God help us, maybe they drive better drinking than when they're sober, right? But, I'm just not very good at it. I'm sloppy. I say the wrong thing. I upset people. I become obnoxious. I spill things and I break things. I came to one time at a party, and the host of the party was much older than me, and I was on the couch. He put a chair in front of the couch and was sitting on the chair, all mad looking, and his wife was kind of in the background giving me dirty looks. And I asked him, I go, what's wrong? Why are you mad? And he said that night, in my drunkenness, I had hit on his mother-in-law and I had peed on the couch. So I'm a hit on your mom, pee on the couch alcoholic. Our book says that we're sometimes dangerously and disgustingly antisocial. I'm not very dangerous, but it turns out I'm kind of disgusting. But I love drinking. I love everything about drinking. I remember my first drunk. Now that doesn't make me an alcoholic. Not everybody remembers their first drunk, but it's interesting, right? I currently have an obsession with Milky Ways, right? The gooey, chocolatey caramel, right? But I don't remember my first Milky Way. I'm sure there was like that first one where I went, oh, these are good, but I don't remember it. But I do remember my first drunk. I was 9 years old, and I was with a kid called Barry. Barry was 2 years older than me. He was 11. That meant he was cool, right? When you're nine, the 11-year-olds are all super cool. And I just wanted to hang out with him, and I would have done anything he wanted. And What he wanted to do was drink, and I didn't know how thirsty I was. Now, at 9 years old, I wasn't a comfortable kid. My parents had gotten divorced when I was 2. I'm a Jewish kid. We had moved from a nice middle-class Jewish neighborhood to the wrong side of the tracks. A lot of anti-Semitism. We became a welfare family, food stamps, Section 8, the whole 9 yards. All of this is in the north of England, in a city called Leeds, where I was born. I know I don't sound like it anymore. I've been in the States for 3/4 of my life, but it was difficult. I didn't like my dad. He bailed, and I didn't like my mom. She screamed and yelled, and I didn't like my older brother. He was kind of a bully. I didn't like my neighbors. I used to get in a lot of fights with them. I didn't like my uncles or aunts or the kids I went to school with. I didn't like my neighbors. I mean, I didn't know any of you guys, but if I did, I probably wouldn't have liked you either, right? I was just kind of wound tight and this like angry kid. And I'm with this kid, Barry, and he hands me a drink of this Old English apple cider. It's like apple juice with a kick. And man, when I first was able to hold some of that stuff down, it was like life changing. It was like I could breathe. It was like, whew, like all of a sudden, things that used to bother me were no big deal. Things that used to be problems didn't feel like problems. I felt like I could relax. I felt like, whew, right? And I knew at that moment I was going to drink as much of this as I could for as long as I could. Now, I didn't become a daily drinker. Mom was kind of strict, and the family wasn't set up that way. But I probably got drunk 2 or 3 more times that year, a couple of times the next year. But by the time I was 14 years old, I was drinking something, taking something, smoking something every single day. I want to be clear. I'm an alcoholic. I only have alcoholism. It's the only disease I have. I'm not an and or anything. But alcoholics shouldn't do drugs. We do them alcoholically. And I don't mean to upset anyone, but if you're like me and you're under 80, you probably did some drugs too. And the only reason I mention that is because when I got sober, I felt, and I don't think anyone meant this, but I felt like even though alcohol was a major part of my story, I felt like because I did a few drugs, maybe I didn't belong here. And it's not true. All that's required for you to belong here is that alcohol is a major part of your story. Whatever else you may have done doesn't affect your eligibility for membership in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I separated myself for years, like, well, maybe I don't belong here because I did some of that powdered version, or I smoked some of that wacky tobacco. And the truth is that I belong here because alcohol's in my story, regardless of whatever else I did. Now, 14 years old, the dope man dope card. And so I was doing a lot more dope than I was drinking. And at 16 years old, I left high school, not because I'm smart or because I'm a bad guy, but because in England at 16 you graduate. And at 16 I graduated, and in England you're considered an adult, and I joined the family business. I signed on to welfare, and I got my Section 8 house, and I got my all my benefits, and I just started to drink and party. And I had these roommates that were within a couple of years of my age, and it was disgusting. I mean, it was a mess, and I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I wouldn't trade it for the world, man. But before my 17th birthday, my dad came to visit from Southern California. He'd moved to California by then. He came to visit, and he found me in this squalor. And he said, I can fix you. Move with me to Southern California. We'll enroll you in college. Well, he was misunderstood. He thought I was a good Jewish boy. My sponsor pointed out, you might be Jewish, but there's nothing much good about you. And he thought he could fix me and set me on my feet. And all I knew about California was pretty girls and palm trees and beaches. And I figured I would come for a couple of years and check it out. And I was scared, though. I didn't know if Californians partied like the English. And it turned out they did, and everything was okay. I got to California, and I found my people pretty quick. And I found this whole other group of people, these tie-dye wearing, wide-eyed people running around after something called a grateful something. And I fell in love with those people, and they really became my people. And I remember the good days, man. I remember, you know, little like the memories are burned in my head like this. And like one of my favorite memories, I was at Shoreline Amphitheater just outside of San Jose, California, and the Dead are playing, and it's a misty day, and it's, it's a series of shows that I've been at, and it's not really raining, but it's damp, and I'm on 4 hits of window pane, and Bobby yells out, "It looks like rain," and the band starts to play, and I have a spiritual experience, the likes of which no 12-step call has given me since, man. And I loved it. And if drinking was still like that, I'd have kept doing it. I got lucky somebody mentioned my infomercial days. God, that's a lifetime ago. There was an earthquake in San Francisco. Uh, and because of that earthquake, I got discovered by a company that was selling a lot of stuff on QVC. Long story, don't have time to go into it. But I don't, I feel bad for the people that were involved in the earthquake, but it really helped me. Anyway, I ended up working for Kenwood as their national spokesperson. So I was on QVC, Home Shopping Network Canada. I was 19 years old. I was the youngest executive Kenwood had ever had. And I was printing money. And it was a great job for a drunk. I used to work on average 3 days every 6 weeks and make, like too much money for that work. And it was amazing. And the truth of it, when I inventoried is I didn't even really work 3 days. What I really did was I worked 5 times for 5 minutes over a 3-day period by going live on QVC. And what's funny about that is my alcoholism progressed to a point really quickly where I couldn't show up sober for 5 minutes for 5 times over a 3-day period. And they fired me from that job. And that's pretty bad going when you can't even show up for 5 minutes 5 times a day over 3 days. But that's where I ended up. And they fired me from that job. And when they fired me from that job, I got another good job and another good job. I had a good resume and it was easy to get jobs. We interview well, right? The problem that I have with jobs is that they actually want me to show up and they really want me to work. And those are 2 things I'm not very good at. So I'd get jobs and lose them, get jobs and lose them. By the time I'm 23 years old, no, 23 is when I ended up in trouble. 25, I can't really get a job. I'd been selling cars. I'd get a job for 90 days, no call, no show. Go get a car salesman. We're a dime a dozen. You can always get a job selling cars. If you're unemployed, go to the local car lot. You fog the mirror, you're hired. And so I would get fired and hired and fired and hired. And at 25 years old, I ended up on the rocks. And a friend of mine had been to AA. He'd been through rehab. His dad had sent him. And I had no friends left in the world. I'd stolen from my last friend. He was letting me sleep on his couch, and I ripped him off to get high, and he threw me out. And my mom wouldn't, she'd take my calls, but the minute I brought up Kenya Western Union me, she'd hang up. I wasn't allowed in my dad's house. I was allowed in the driveway. And he would palm me $20 that his wife didn't know about. But that was as much help as I was getting. And so I called AA. And some guy met me at a meeting and he took me to a 7-day detox. And that was startling for me. It had been almost 3 years since I'd been on TV, but I still thought I was the national spokesperson and didn't belong in a homeless shelter. I was the only guy that didn't know I was homeless. Everybody else knew I was homeless. I didn't know I was homeless, but I turned out I was. I went there for 7 days. And then from there, I went to a halfway house. And I honestly got some hope in the halfway house. I really did. There were people there that kind of sounded like me and they kind of felt like me. And it kind of seemed like they were putting their lives together. And I kind of thought that maybe this could be help. And it was hope. And I'm an egotistical idiot, right? So I'm sitting next to a guy that works in a warehouse and I'm thinking, geez, you put your life back together, you're going to be a sober warehouse guy. I put my life back together. I'm going back on TV, baby. I mean, there's real hope for me. There's not much hope for you, but there's real hope for me. And I stayed at the halfway house for 26 days. And then the halfway house was weird for me. They wanted me to come home at a certain time, which nobody ever told me what time to come home. They wanted me to follow rules, which I'm not much for that. They wanted me to do a chore, right? And I got Sparky, the manager, telling me to clean other people's pee in the toilet. And again, I don't know I'm homeless, right? I think I'm the national spokesperson for Kenwood still. So I'm offended by the fact you'd want me to clean the toilet. And so I left the halfway house. You will find this shocking, but I did not stay sober. I left there and I got drunk. Um, and very quickly, I was in trouble again. I'd gotten a job, I'd gotten some money, but very quickly, money disappears with me when I'm drinking. I got a friend of mine that says his dad used to tell him a joke. If there were 50 pigeons on a telephone wire and you shot one, how many pigeons are left? And he'd say 49. Said, no, all of them are gone because the gunshot scared them away. There's no pigeons left. And then my friend tells a joke. He says, if you have $100 and you buy $10 worth of crack, how much money do you have left? And the drunks don't get it, but the guys like me are like, yeah, none, right? Because it falls through our fingers. And I'm that guy and I'm in trouble again, but I don't care. I come back to AA because there's still hope for me here. And then what started was the worst 3 years of my life. Because I would get drunk to get sober, to get sober, to get drunk, to get drunk, to get sober. I would get 3 or 4 days and I would drink. I get a week and I would drink. I get 10 days and I would drink. I got 30 days twice. I lied about 60 days once, but I would always get drunk again. And it just seemed really frustrating for me. I didn't understand why. And I would try to figure it out, but here's what really happens to me. When I stop drinking, something happens that is weird and unexplainable. What happens is I get this lonely, empty, vacant, anxious sense. Like it gets, I don't know, like that 9-year-old, I guess. Like I get this, and I can't tell you, right? I mean, how do you tell somebody? Even someone in AA, how are you doing? Well, I'm a little lonely and anxious and I'm insecure and I don't really think you like me and I think you're only talking to me because I'm a member of AA and I certainly wouldn't be talking to you if I wasn't in AA and I'm just uncomfortable and I'm afraid all the time and I have no real hope for the future and I hate myself. How are you? I mean, you can't say that, right? So what do you say? Well, I'm fine. How are you? Fine. I'm fine. You're fine. Fine. Everybody's fine. I'm fine. I'm dying in the rooms of AA and I'm getting this edge on me and it's just kind of like sharp and it's just and then while all this is happening, there's a voice in my head, and the voice says this. It says, have a drink, you can have a drink. Why not have a drink? It'll make you feel better. Why don't you have a drink? You know what? How long are you sober now? 4, 5, 6 days? For God's sakes, what's the matter with you? You're not going to stay sober. You're going to drink again anyway. You've never stayed sober. You're a piece of crap. Why are you putting yourself through this? What are you going to do? Make us suffer for another 2 weeks and then drink? Why put us through the suffering? Why not just drink anyway? And I'm like, And then there's another voice, and the other voice says that you're a piece of garbage. You've always been a piece of garbage. Nobody likes you. See those guys over there at the back of the room that are laughing and talking? They're laughing and talking about you. You might have a job now, but they're going to figure you out and fire you. You're no good. You've never been no good. And I got all this going on. And then someone in AA says, how you doing? And I say, fine. Right? And I just can't breathe, man. And I don't want to go get drunk. I don't want to get drunk. It is not my plan. I have burnt my life to the ground hundreds of times. I don't want to do that. But here's what I want to do. I want to take the edge off. I just got to take the edge off. That's all I want to do. So here's what I'm going to do. I got a plan and it's a good one. I'm going to have 1, maybe 2, 3 at the most. No more than 4. No more than 4. I just need to be able to breathe. You know what? I'll come to the meeting tomorrow and maybe I'll tell you people I drank, maybe I didn't. It's none of your business and it's an anonymous program anyway. And time you keep telling me doesn't mean anything. So who cares? We're all sober. Who got up earliest this morning, right? That's the guy that's sober the longest. It doesn't matter, but I got to breathe. And I go and I have 1, maybe 2, 3 at the most, no more than 4. And somewhere between 1 and 4, I change my mind. And it becomes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I don't know how it happened, but somehow I come to the next day or the day after broke. One more time, I've embarrassed myself, broke something, spilled something, said something inappropriate. Maybe I'm in jail, maybe I'm not. I don't know. But whatever I am, it ain't good. And I snivel back into the rooms of AA and I pretend I've somehow broken a code. I'm so sorry I did it again. I hope you can forgive me. This time I really mean it. I do. I'm never, ever, ever going to drink again. But I tell you, you put me on a lie detector. I mean that. I'm never going to drink again. But 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 days later, I got all that on me again, and I got no choice. And I tell you, some guy in the meeting, I'm sober 24 years. Some guy says he's sober 24 years. You know what I think? You poor bastard. I mean, oh my God, for 24 years, you felt 3 days sober. How have you done it? See, I don't know. And I knew that if you get a home group, get a sponsor, work the steps, help new guys, find a God, prayer, meditate, do all the stuff we do in Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't know that it doesn't feel 3 days sober for very long. I don't know that at 60, 90, 120 days, it starts to shift. And after a couple of years, I start to find a foundation. And at 5 or 10 years, it becomes a way of life. I don't know any of that. I think what you say when you say we're going to stay sober one day at a time, what I think you mean is we're going to suffer together one day at a time forever. That's what I think you mean. I think you mean we're going to come every Friday night to the Prescott speaker meeting. We're going to huddle before the meeting, and I'm going to say to you, how you doing? And you're going to say, oh, it's terrible. My job sucks. My life sucks. My wife, girlfriend, husband, boyfriend sucks. Everything sucks. I'm miserable. I wish I could drink. I'm holding on for dear life. But you know what? I'm sober anyway. How are you? Oh, I'm about the same. See you next week. That's what I think AA offers. I don't know how amazing this life is once you're immersed in it, once you're swimming in a sea of it. I don't know how cool it really is. And so I keep going loading, and get sober, and getting loaded, and getting sober. And you say confusing things in AA. You talk about the phenomenon of craving, which is very confusing. I don't understand it, which it turns out it's okay because phenomenon just means something nobody understands. People have tried to explain stuff with acetone, and who cares, right? It's all nonsense. The big book says we can't fully answer the riddle why I'm like this. But here's what the problem I had with phenomenon of craving is. You say that I drink against my will. And I will tell you to this day, sitting in this chair right now, I've never taken a drink against my will. Here's what happens to me. Here's the phenomenon of craving for me. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, somewhere in there. And the phenomenon of craving comes over me like this. I change my mind. And 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 look like a good idea to me. And so it doesn't feel like an allergy. It doesn't feel like against my will. But if you think about how many promises I've made, and you think about how much regret I've had, and you look at the surrounding times, clearly I'm not drinking out of choice. There's something else going on here. So I'm going in and out of AA and out of AA. And in July of 96, I show up at an AA club on the 17th for what hopefully will be my last time as a newcomer. And I'm sitting in this meeting, and I've been there for a couple of days. And this guy who was to be my first sponsor, I was sponsored by the same man for the first 20 years of my sobriety, and then it became necessary to make a change. But this man saved my life. This man pulled me back from the grave, and for that I will be forever grateful. And this man started to share in this meeting, and he said something that just blew my mind. I'm sure it had been said before, but he was the first guy that said it that I heard. And this is what he said. He said, I've never really suffered from my drinking. My drinking has always been the thing that has brought me relief. Sure, it's caused me problems, loss of jobs, blah, 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 blah. He said, the people that suffer from my drinking are typically my spouse, my kids, I didn't have any kids, but he did, kids, my boss, my people around me. What I suffer from is my abstinence. And he said this, for him, his alcoholism began where the bag and the bottle ended. That what he suffered from was painful abstinence. And he got my attention because I knew I couldn't drink. I didn't know I could stay sober. To me, it felt like sobriety was punishment for my alcoholism and that I had to drink. I wasn't doing it to escape. I wasn't on full flight from reality, although those things were sometimes true. I was doing it because abstinence was so painfully aware for me that I needed to take that edge off. And I asked him for help, and he told me he would be my sponsor. And I'm glad it went down that way. I don't think I could have asked him. I don't think my ego would have let me, but he told me he would sponsor me. And he told me to meet him the next day at a detox meeting, not to be there as a client, but to be there on a panel. I was only a couple of days sober. And we went to a detox meeting, and I was a panelist. And I've been in detoxes, halfway houses, treatment centers, jails, prisons. I've been to all the H&I ever since in the 24 years of sobriety. I love H and I. It's a big regret for me. I'm locked down. I'm not doing live meetings, and for me, it's the one thing I miss the most. I get to do some halfway house stuff by Zoom, but I miss that the most. Then he had me go to a couple of days later to a book study with him, and I got to tell you, I've been going to literature studies, primarily big book studies. I've hosted a few. I've done some weekends. I've gone to a lot of weekends. I've been involved in studying the book ever since. Amazing two foundational things that he had me do: get involved in working with others and get involved in our literature. And then he said, let's talk about the steps. And I'd never really done the steps. I thought they were extracurricular. I'd done one, two, three. They used to call it the AA waltz. I haven't heard that in a while. I love that. 1, 2, 3, drink. 1, 2, 3, drink. Right? I did that over and over and over again. And I said, he said, I'm going to help you. We're going to do the steps. My brother's got 10 years. So when I was he went in and out for a while. I was probably about 8 years sober when he first came around. And he was in England, and they shipped him to me in Las Vegas because I know how to get people sober, right? Families are crazy. They just figure I'm sober. I could probably fix my brother, and they shipped him off to me. I pick him up at the airport, and I'm scared to death because I don't know what to do with this knucklehead. Nobody stays sober anyway. I mean, what are we kidding, right? So I said to him, what are you going to do? And he said this thing that was fantastic. He said, I'm going to suspend my right to have an opinion. And I thought, man, I didn't know those words till just now, but that's what I did. If you're new, I hope that you are in enough agony to suspend your right to have an opinion. And when this guy that was my sponsor told me we were going to do the steps, I said, okay, what does that mean? And we talked about step one. And step one is not that complicated. Your sponsor might have you write a bunch of stuff. He didn't have me write nothing. We just talked about my drinking. And it became clear very quickly when you look at my life and the spiral down it had taken, that a guy like me shouldn't drink, that I am powerless over alcohol. I drink when I don't want to. I drink when I want to. I drink more than I want to. Just, I can't seem to not drink. And I've had the goal of not drinking, and I've drank anyway. And if I had the power to not drink, I wouldn't be drinking. But it turns out I drink when I don't want to. And that really is, I'm powerless over alcohol. And I mean, my life's unmanageable. What does that mean? Somewhere along the line, some groups that I participated in, we would talk about the unmanageability of step one. I think incorrectly. We would talk about it as step 6. We talk about it as 1, but it was really step 6. The unmanageability of step 1 has nothing to do with mid or long-term sobriety and not being able to manage your life, right? Because it's step 1. It's to do with the new guy. How's a new guy's life unmanageable? Well, if you're new, is your living situation by your choosing? And what I mean is that you're living where you want to live and where you can afford to live if you were doing the career that you could probably do. Talking of careers, how's it going? Is your career going the way you want it to go? Is it moving in the right direction? Are you living with the kind of person, do you have a spouse that you love? And if you do, how's the relationship? Is it good or is it bad? Are things of your choosing? Are you doing what you want to do? Or does it seem like other people or situations are making decisions for you? Are you managing your life, or are you reacting to situations and circumstances? I was reacting to situations and circumstances. My life was not being managed by me. It was unmanageable. In fact, my sponsor said to me, if you had hired someone to make decisions for you, do you like the decision so well, the direction your life is going, that you would want to keep them employed? Or would you want to fire them for mismanagement? I would fire them, right? My life's unmanageable. Well, now we run into problems because now we got step 2, and step 2 has always been a problem for me because it talks about God, and I don't believe in God. I just don't believe in God, okay? You're not going to persuade me. I don't believe in God. God, my mom used to tell me, is for fools and children. It's the opiate of the masses. I grew up in a Jewish home. We did all the tradition stuff. We made it look like we were Jewish, but nobody really believed in God. Nobody really does. It's all phooey, right? And then so I come to AA, and now I know you don't insist I take your faith, but I'm a Jewish kid in a room full of Christians talking about God as he may express himself. And some of you break the rules and you're out of line, but most of you don't. And you don't insist I believe in your God, but I think you do. And so I can't do my God and I can't do your God, and I'm stuck. I'm stuck. Imagine if you were happened to be the average American with some kind of a Christian background faith, whether you believe in it or not, and you get sober in a Muslim country and they say God doesn't even express himself. You'll know who they're talking about, and it'll scare the shit out of you. And it scared the shit out of me. And I can't do my God, and I can't do your God. And I don't believe in God. I'm not doing step 2, which means I can't do step 3. My sponsor said the funniest thing. He said, you don't have to believe in God to do step 2, nor do you have to believe in God to do step 3. I said, well, that's a little ridiculous. So he challenged me. He said, go out to the people in the home group that you like and respect and ask them, why are they sober? Well, that's stupid, because we all say the same thing. It may as well be passed out on a little card, right? Why are you sober? Well, I'm sober today because of a power greater than myself that I found in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm sober because of a God that I found in the steps, and I'd like to thank God for AA, and I'd like to thank AA for God. Now, I don't mean to goof on that, because if you're new and you ask me why I'm sober today because of a God that I found in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. By the grace of the beauty, the power of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was introduced to that God. And if I get to meet him, I'm going to say this to him. But I don't know if I will, because I don't really know what I believe. I'm very confused spiritually. But if I meet him, I'm going to say this. Pops, I dig it, man. Pretty girls and sunsets were cool. But that AA thing, that was for me. And I'm so grateful, and I'll never repay that. And man, I don't mean to get goofy, but you know what I mean? But still, so I go back to my sponsor and I go, well, they all said God. And he said this. He said, if you found God in step 2 and step 3, Sheldon, why the hell would you do step 4? I mean, seriously, it sucks. Nobody ever likes doing it. Bring it up at the next open discussion meeting. You'll hear all kinds of crazy things. Oh, step 4 sucks. Oh, you better do it right or you're going to die. There's 19 different ways to write 4th step. I mean, there's workshops, workbooks, there's questions out of the 12 and 12. If you go out of the big book, how many columns is it? I've heard 3, 4, 5. I do 6 because I think more is better. The man on this planet that used to be my grand sponsor for over 20 years, who helped more alcoholics than anybody on the planet, did 6 questions that he came up with himself as a 4th step and never cracked the big book, for crying out loud. So how the hell do you write a 4th step? It's confusing. I'm going to die if I do it wrong. And it sucks. I don't want to do that. So if I don't need to do that because I found God in step 2 or 3, I ain't doing it. 5? Are you kidding me? I didn't spend a lot of time on the street, but I learned this. Deny, deny, deny. You want me to write it down. You must have lost your mind. You ever see that show, The First 48? There's always a good cop and a bad cop. And they always say to the suspect, you know, if you clear your conscience and just tell us what happened, you'd feel much better. They'd hand him a piece of paper and a pen and say, just write it out. It'll be fine. It's never fine. If the guy ever does that, it's over. It's the worst thing you can do, right? I'm not writing shit down. 6 and 7, nobody understands 6 and 7. We argue about it in meetings all the time. Wilson only wrote 2 paragraphs, one on 6 and then a prayer for 7. Nobody understands 6 and 7. 8 and 9 are very expensive. I'm not doing them. 10 and 11 are so confusing that half of the people listening to my voice think they're doing step 10 when they're really doing step 11. Now, what's funny about that is every time I say that, some people go, yeah, that's right. I know that. Yeah. Other people go, what? Well, if you don't know, it doesn't really matter. Read it in the book. You'll see what I'm talking about. It really is step 11. It's not really step 10. But those of us like me that are like, yes, I knew that. We're just spiritually arrogant, right? We just like to know shit other people don't know. So we got work to do ourselves because we're nuts. If you read how Wilson did the steps on page 13, he does them wrong. I used to belong to the thinking of AA that if you don't do the steps the way I do the steps, you're going to die, right? But this is about God and spirituality and trying to find my connection. And the only time that it matters how you do the steps is if you do it the way your sponsor tells you. If I sponsor you, you will do it the way that I have found the most effective. If you won't do it the way I have found the most effective, find another sponsor. But that doesn't mean I'm right. It just means I'm right for my current mojo. What's funny is it's changed over the years. So my right now, or was I right then? Or will I be right in 5 years when it changes again? I don't know. This is about seeking, not about finding, right? So anyway, I digress. 10 and 11 confusing. 12 is a pain in the ass. There are shows I need to, if you go on anybody's Facebook feed, you'll find 15 or 20 suggestions from their friends of what to binge watch next. And 12 gets in the way of that. So again, if I could find God in 2 or 3, I would. I would, right? But I can't, so I have to do the rest of the steps. Ultimate evidence, I suppose, if you need evidence, is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. That's what it says in step 12. It doesn't say having had a spiritual awakening as a result of the first couple, right? It says do them all the way through. Anyway, I digress again. So what next? So my sponsor says to me, grab a big book and let's take a look at what it says in step 2. Lots of great, some of my favorite writing in the book is around step 2, right? But then he says, let's get down to the working part. What's the, where would it, because it tells you, like in step 3, you say the prayer, and 4, you write the columns, right? Where does it tell you how to do step 2? And it's in one little paragraph in the middle of 47. It says, we need to ask the guy, a new person, just one simple question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe in a power greater than myself? Do I now believe? No, I don't. I don't believe in God, which is fine. How do I know it's fine? Because there's an or, right? If it was you have to believe in God to do step 2, it would say, do I now believe in God? If the answer is no, right, then go directly to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You're done. It's over until you can believe in God. But it doesn't. It says it's okay not to believe in God because it says or. Or am I even willing to believe in God? What does that mean? Am I even willing to believe that there might be a God? Maybe it's possible. I don't know. I doubt it. I mean, gun to my head, I don't believe in God. It's kind of a stretch for a guy like me, but am I willing to believe that maybe, just maybe, there might be something more powerful than me? I suppose. Yes. I mean, I'm not buying in, right? I'm not all in here, but I'm willing to believe that maybe there might be. And then it says, as soon as a man says that he does, which I didn't, or is even willing, which I guess I was, we emphatically ensure him he's on his way. What does that mean? Emphatically. Yeah, baby, you're done. Step 2 in the bag. In fact, if you're stuck on step 2, unless your sponsor disagrees, then we just did it. So now what? Now what? Say the prayer. Say the goddamn prayer. Don't worry about what the bondage of self is. You don't know yet. You haven't written your inventory. That's what the inventory is about, is the bondage of self. Just agree with your sponsor, smile and nod a lot, read 60 to 63 a couple of times, and say the goddamn prayer. Well, if I turn my will and my life over something I don't believe in, doesn't that make me a hypocrite? Yes, it does. And you have a lot of problems. And if we were to organize them in order of severity, and the ones that are killing, your hypocrite would be so far down the list, it doesn't matter. Say the goddamn prayer. And then write the inventory. And then write the inventory. And then fly over 6 and 7 like all of us do. You come out of your 5th step. If you're not willing to have God remove every single defective character, you haven't been paying attention. Don't worry. You struggle with it later, right? Get into 8 and 9. Stop making the amends. AA's birthday, which I'm going to pretend is June 15th, right? Or June 10th, which it probably isn't. It's probably June 17th, but that doesn't matter because the whole thing's just none of it. I know that, which makes me special, right? Right? None of it matters, right? But Dr. Bob got sober on step 9. That's how important it is. Wilson got sober on step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Page 13, read it. 6 and 7. Never did 8 and 9 till later. Right, but Wilson gets sober on the first part. Smith, he does all the steps with Bill, then goes off to a medical convention, gets blind drunk, comes home and tells tells Bill Wilson, I'm going to do a 9-step. Doesn't do 1 through 5 again, doesn't redo nothing, goes out and makes amends, half drunk. If you know the story, half drunk makes amends, and then is able to stay sober. So we pay the money. I told this old timer once, I was making newcomer money, and I told him, I go, I've done the math. And at my current level of income, it's going to take me 30 years to pay those amends. He just laughed. He goes, oh, you know what you'll have when you're done, kid? I go, what's that? He goes, 30 years. The truth is I didn't make newcomer money for very long, and I paid him quicker than that, right? And I got promotions, and I showed up at work, and I acted like a sober member of AA. And the next thing you know, the amends were made, and it didn't take, that long. It took me about 8 years to pay all the amends financially. And then there was one I wouldn't make because I was stubborn and obstinate. My sponsor just told me to keep asking for the willingness. And I made my last amend at 18 years sober. And I'm not proud of that, but it is the truth for me. When I faced up the last person I burned, I was 18 years sober. And my sponsor used to tell me, there's a big difference between making all your amends and all your amends but one. Every time I run into someone that's sober a ton of years and they're like, oh, I'm not feeling it in AA anymore. It's always one of two things. They quit sponsoring people because they're too busy, or they didn't finish making their amends because life got good enough. And Wilson talks about good being the enemy of the great. But anyway, right? And then 10 and 11. And what's 10 and 11 about? Right? I'm a flawed human being. I make mistakes. Let me tell you, I probably made more mistakes this week than most of the newest newcomer, right? I keep humaning. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm human, right? But I'm so flawed and so fallible, and I keep making mistakes. And I got 10 and 11 to keep looking at it. I love the fact that it says when these crop up. Wouldn't it be better if it said, on the rare occasion and the slightest possibility? I mean, we doubt it will, but should you happen to do anything stupid ever in your life ever again, I mean, we're not saying you will, but if, it doesn't say that. It says when these crop up, because you're an idiot and you're going to do it again. And I am, and I do, and I did, and whatever. One of these times I'll tell you more of my story and you'll go, really? You? But we thought you were so spiritual. No. I love how it says in our book, it says, no one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles, right? What that means is if you wrote down the principles, then you followed me around, at some point you'd go, that's nothing like. I mean, it's not even close. You're not even in the game. What is wrong with you, right? No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence. We're not saints. 6 and 7. I want to talk about it for 5 minutes because it's the new thing that's pressing on me. I showed up at my sponsor's house. I was about 3 years sober, and I told him I thought I was getting worse. I told him seemed like I was more afraid, more anxious, more upset. I'm not drinking. I'm doing the dance. My grand sponsor used to say that Alcoholics Anonymous is designed to distract the newcomer, King Baby, until God can come into the picture. And I'm doing all the action and activity in AA, and it is distracting me, and I am staying sober, but I feel worse. And my sponsor said, well, maybe you don't feel worse. Maybe you're more aware of your inadequacy and your failing and your insecurity. Maybe you're actually better because we all think you're better, but maybe you're more acutely aware. And then he said, what you have is a step 6 problem, which I was offended at because I'd done step 6, right? I'd done step 6. And he thought that was funny. He said that the story of his sobriety was step 6. The story of his, whether or not he was physically sober, was step 1. But the story of his serenity was step 6. That how much he could become willing to turn his character defects over to God was basically whether or not he was going to be happy and content in this world. That everything I do in Alcoholics Anonymous is about one thing. It's about me trying to get less of me and more of God, and me find a way to get closer to God. Now, I don't want to sound like a holy roller because I don't know who God is. I'm somewhat of a Jew, right? I mean, I think I'm a Buddhist, right? But I was born Jewish. I'm certainly not a Christian. I'm a heathen to most of you. I'm going to hell for God's sakes. I mean, I'm in a lot of trouble. But I love God and I'm trying to find him, and he changes for me all the time. And sometimes it's tidal. Sometimes I feel like God's like, whoo, like the waves over my head. And other times I feel like he's at my ankles, and sometimes licking my toes. And sometimes the tide's way out, right? I was in Fort Lauderdale one time, and there was sand dunes, and the water was behind the sand dunes, and I couldn't even see the ocean. But I never thought someone pulled the plug on the Atlantic and the water was gone. I knew it was coming back. And that's my relationship with God. It ebbs and flows, and it's magical and mystical, and it's in the spaces and the gaps, and it's not in the rules and regulations and whether I wear the right tie to the right meeting and sit in the right chair and do the 4-step properly right. I mean, that stuff might help you because it's magical and it's spiritual in its own way, but it's not about that. It's about looking for God. So why did we say, if step 6 is all we do here, it's all we do here. We get prepared to become willing to allow God to make us better. How do we do that? By failing at getting better ourselves, by continually screwing up, continually falling on my ass, continually realizing that without God, I'm not enough. Without God, I'll never be enough. Right? Continually realizing, if AA is all about 6 and 7, why did Bill only write 1 paragraph on 6 and only a prayer on 7? I don't think that's true. I think he wrote the entire book about 6 and 7. There was nothing else to say. Step 1, realize without God, I'm screwed. Step 2, realize that God is the answer. Step 3, decide to look for it. Step 4, let's look at what my life's like when I don't have a God in my life. Step 6 and 7. Step 8 and 9, clear up the mess I made living without God in my life. 10 and 11, remind myself I'm still living like God's not in my life, so I can run back to step 6. Step 12, grab someone by the hand, like the poet says, and find the latch that only his hand will open to the door that is God. And everything I do here is about seeking more God, less me, more God, less me, more God. And that comes from a guy that struggles to meditate at the same time every day, that woke up this morning. There are 3 things in my life that adore me, a people and an animal, right? I got my girlfriend adores me, my dog adores me, and my son adores me. I woke up this morning mad at all 3 of them for no reason. I mean, I fail at this stuff all the time, but it's in the seeking and in the looking. I don't understand it, and I'm glad. Why would God? I'm a little mad about this. I'm going to say this real quick, and I'm going to shut up. Why would God let me remain flawed? Why? God's God, right? God could make me pure. He could make me stop making mistakes. He's God. You guys told me He is the Father, and I'm the child, right? I have a son. If my son needed something and I could do it, I would do it. I need something, God. Why don't you do it? You know what happened if God rendered me pure, rendered me without pain, rendered me without heartache and without struggle? You know the first thing that would happen is I'd stop looking for Him. It is in the struggle and in the pain that turns me to God, that continues driving me towards seeking Him. Perhaps my struggle is the greatest thing that God gives me. Perhaps the difficulties in life I have that drive me to turn towards Him are the greatest gift. Wilson said we are not bound by our virtue, we are bound by our deficiency. And perhaps it is my humanness, my perfect humanness, my flawed humanness, my broken humanness, but my perfect humanness, that I am driven to seek a power greater than myself that will allow me to connect with you, that will allow me to remain sober, and that will allow me to remain an everyday member of Alcoholics Anonymous in good standing. Thank you for listening. I hope I entertained. If I inspired, and some of you asked questions about contacting me, my phone number is there. Write it down, send me a text. I would love to talk to anyone about anything at any time. If I upset you, I hope your sponsor's on speed dial. Call them. Thank you for listening.
Yay.
I've asked, thanks, Sheldon. I've asked Jim to read A Vision for You.
Thank you. My name is Jim, and I'm an alcoholic. Our purpose is meant to be just to realize we're only little. God will constantly deliver to you to us. Asking Him in your morning meditation when you do reach shape, man is still sick. The answers will come if no one has an order. But if you can't transmit something to God, see to it that your relationship with Him is right, and greater friends will come back to countless others. This is the fact for us. At the end of your studies, you understand God. Admit you all to Him and your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Get free of what you find and join us. With you in the fellowship spirit, you will surely meet some of us as you get your road happy day. And bless you, keep you on them.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Now I'm going to ask everybody to unmute themselves, and Sheldon will lead us out in a prayer of his choice. And then after the prayer, you can thank Sheldon if you would like. Okay, Sheldon.
Thanks, everybody. I'd love to close with a serenity prayer, if that's okay with you guys. God,
Serenity. The things I cannot change. Courage, the things I can.
Things that I can.
To know the
To know the
difference.
difference. Thank you, Sheldon.
Thank you,
Thank you
Sheldon.
very much, Sheldon.
Sheldon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sheldon.
Thank you guys very much. It was a lot of fun hanging out with you guys. And don't get carried away because you're feeding the.
Where did Sheldon
I hope
go?
that I'll get to meet some of you guys.
Thanks, Sheldon.
Thank you, Sheldon.
Sheldon.
You disappeared.
Appreciate it.
Go.
Take care, guys. Have a great night.